Good evening. Some call it the worst storm in Wisconsin history, and by any measure, the wind that blew through western Wisconsin last Tuesday was devastating. One person died, and a second death may have been related to the storm. Property damage is being calculated in the terms of hundreds of millions of dollars. It started early Tuesday night, building in central Minnesota, roaring through the Twin Cities at 85 miles per hour and picking up speed as it entered Wisconsin. Here at the NewsCenter, radar gave a clear picture of the storm as it moved closer to Eau Claire. NewsCenter meteorologist Joe Dandria began issuing severe thunderstorm warnings, and members of the Eau Claire Amateur Radio Club stationed spotters in different parts of the city to watch for tornadoes. At 9:39, just as the NewsCenter was issuing a tornado warning, electric power was lost. Fortunately, most people were warned in time. As civil defense sirens sounded, families sat out the the storm in their basements. Those who dared to look outside saw sheets of rain flying horizontally and heard the sound of huge trees cracking and crashing to the ground. When it passed, no one was really understood how bad the damage was. Reporter Randy LUBE spent the next 15 hours covering the aftermath.
I've been calling a few.
Headquarters to all units in the city. When you get a chance, check all businesses. Check all businesses in your areas. Advise if you have windows or any kind of damage.
For the people tracking the storm at the Eau Claire Communications Center, Tuesday night was frustrating. They knew the storm was bad, but they wouldn't know how bad until morning.
Fog cloud has the southwest of Eau Claire, headed toward the city. Headed toward the city. We'll give more information.
This is what they saw when they looked out the front door Wednesday morning. Trees uprooted, a scene repeated throughout the city.
Just like the vegetation of the city had been, somebody had reached down and just yanked it up by the roots.
It got worse and not better when you ventured outside the city limits. In one case, the storm's effect was tremendous. This is what's left of the Mill Run subdivision just northwest of Eau Claire near Menards. Row upon row of homes, not just damaged, but destroyed. 112-mile-an-hour winds blew away the roofs and walls. Miraculously, no one was hurt. Barb Martinson and her young daughter just managed to get into the basement before their home collapsed.
I was standing in the stairway. Well, I was up the stairs first when the front window blew through, and then I ran for the basement. I have a little girl, and I grabbed her and ran for the basement. And then I watched the roof blow off, and the walls just started falling down.
And this is the way it looked when you came back up?
Yeah, they had to come and get me out. I was trapped in the basement, and they came in and helped get me out.
How were you trapped?
The wall fell over the stairway that goes down to the basement, and they had to push the wall back up to get us out through.
77-year-old Roy Christie says it's the worst storm he's ever seen. He lives in Mill Run and literally pushed against the walls of his home to keep them from collapsing.
Well, I'll tell you, it was so bad that this wind, I was standing up against our sliding doors, patio doors, and I was pushing against them to keep them from coming in. And all at once was an awful crash in the house, and something from over here, I believe it was a rafter from one of the places, went right through my wife's bedroom. And the crash was so bad that it sounded just like maybe a cannon went off or something. And she started screaming, and I told her to go for the basement.
Just across the road at Menards, there's more damage. Sheds are toppled and utility poles are snapped.
How much damage is there here? It looks like there's a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure there's many dollars worth. I just haven't begun to assess it yet. There's just no end to it.
Along this county road near Menards, the utility poles were snapped like toothpicks and left strewn across the road. It was just yesterday when most of this area was restored with electricity. Randy LUBE, NewsCenter 13, northwest of Eau Claire, near the Mill Run subdivision.
In Dunn County, the first death caused by the storm was reported. Ron Sanders explains what happened.
25-year-old Robin Young of O'Galley Township in southern Dunn County was killed when her 70-foot mobile home flipped over. A refrigerator fell on top of her, killing her almost instantly. Young was holding her 1-year-old son at the moment the storm struck, but the boy was thrown from her to his father. Father, son, and Mrs. Young's sister all suffered only minor injuries. The storm cut a swath through the southern half of Dunn and Pierce counties, leaving hundreds of homes with damaged roofs or garages. More than 200 barns and sheds were flattened. A number of mobile homes were shattered.
What all did you lose?
Everything. I mean, the thing left.
Didn't you salvage anything out of it?
Nope. Well, just clothes. It's all have to be rewashed, you know.
Totally collapsed.
Yep. Just more like it blew up when we hit there. That's upside down right now.
The wind was just blowing like crazy. It blew the windows in the basement. It's just steady.
Did you hear the garage fall?
No, I didn't know that till I come up and looked and seen it gone.
I did.
That's the only thing I didn't hear. It was just so much wind and, you know, the heavy rain all the time.
In Pierce County, in ELMWOOD, a two-story building collapsed, trapping 12. Civil defense officials were able to rescue all of them. There was heavy damage to the elementary and high schools and to area trailer courts. The same story in Elk Mound in eastern Dunn County. Heavy losses in mobile homes and in garages and roofs. Ron Sanders, NewsCenter 13, Dunn County.
On Saturday, 74-year-old August Hoffman died at St. Joseph's Hospital in Chippewa Falls. At first, officials thought his death was related to the storm. Hoffman had succumbed to heart failure after his mobile home was damaged in the tornado that hit the Stardust mobile home court. Now officials are not sure if it was related to the storm. They say Hoffman had a long history of heart trouble. Much of the storm damage was in the country to barns, crops, and livestock. In a minute, a look at farm damage when our special report continues.
Need some construction help fast? Rainier Construction of Elmwood builds quality construction projects fast. Homes up in a week. With a staff of 350 to serve your building needs, you found a dependable construction source. Approved by HUD, FHA, and Farm Home. For all your building needs, houses, one-story outbuildings, try and rely on Rainier Construction of Elmwood. Your tri-state dealer for West Central Wisconsin. Call today, 639-4132.
Here's good news from the Northern Wisconsin State Fair in Chippewa Falls. The big 99-cent special inflation fighter, Tuesday, July 29th. Super Coke Coupon Day, Wednesday, July 30th. Everything you'd expect from a great state fair and more at the Northern Wisconsin State Fair in Chippewa Falls, July 29th through August 3rd.
Damage to area farms and crops was no less severe than in the city. Gary West reports.
Damage to farms in the four hardest-hit counties defies description. Barns that have successfully battled the weather, some for more than 100 years, lost this war. Farmers whose existence has always depended greatly on the weather donned flashlights and courage and stepped out of their basements early Wednesday, many of them finding their barns laying in ruins. And that was just the beginning. Their animals had no basement in which to seek shelter, and many lost their lives. Joe Osmond lost 2 barns, one of them collapsing on some livestock.
Well, we had 21 head in this barn here, and there's 8 of them dead. We got the rest of them out. There's 3 that are still crippled, and we don't know what the outcome of them will be.
At the very least, more than 10,000 farms were left without electrical power and no hope of getting it back for days. When power is lost, water pumps don't run, and milking equipment is silent. Both critical situations. It's impossible to milk a large herd by hand, and animals can't last more than 12 hours without water. The Department of Natural Resources pitched in, using fire control trucks to haul water to Dunn County farms.
The fire department in Menominee tells us they pumped over 100,000 gallons, and some of our trucks didn't get any water from there. They were getting water from the streams. So we may have gotten up to 150,000 gallons of water pumped to cattle in Dunn County.
That was just Wednesday. Water hauling was repeated throughout the week, with a similar number of farms in need of water. Many farmers hooked up generators capable of handling their milking systems, one generator often being shared by a number of farms. National Guard and DNR generators were also brought in, 130 in all. Most of the power has been restored now, but the total extent of the storm's damage won't be known until harvest time this fall. Crops, especially corn, were bent to the ground by the unparalleled blast, and leaves were stripped by hail, rain, and wind. Much of the corn has sprung back to a near normal position again, but the crop it yields this fall is sure to be less than normal. Oats, nearly ripened, had its brittle stalks bent and broken, and again the yield is in question. But through it all, there was a sense of unity, brotherhood on the part of the farming community. Again, Joe Osmond.
I came over here and looked at this barn and knew there was 21 head of cattle in there, and I didn't know what I was going to do. So I went up to the fire department, and I asked him if I could have some help, and I don't know how many men were here, but it was just tremendous.
It will be years before the countryside looks normal again. It may never look the way it did before the storm. Gary West, NewsCenter 13.
In the city of Eau Claire, the worst damage was at Mill Run, but throughout the city, the cleanup will take months. Jeff Welch reports.
The destruction in Menard's Mill Run subdivision is dramatic. Twisted lumber, furniture, personal belongings, and insulation carpet the ground. Former contents of more than a dozen homes ripped apart by high winds. Al Jordan was in Grantsburg the night of the storm. When he returned to Mill Run, he found his duplex in shambles. He says it was quite a shock. Other residents are calling it a nightmare. As the sting of the initial blow lessens, the ordeal of cleaning up begins. Jordan copes with his losses by keeping busy.
Helping my dad clean up his yard right now. That helps. But every time you come back here, you see this and you just, why? So, I don't know.
Jordan is staying with his parents. He says his neighbors have moved in with relatives or are lodging at motels. Sherry Fenner's family of 5 stays with relatives.
We're living across the street with my sister-in-law.
What's the mood around here generally from your neighbors? How are they reacting? What are they doing?
Well, everybody's really nice. They're all trying to help, and I don't know, they're just really nice.
Fenner wants to move her family into a camper next to her duplex while it's being repaired. She has no idea how long that will take. The storm tried to turn this young neighborhood of rented duplex living into waste. It may look as if the storm succeeded, but beyond the debris and the misery and the seeming futility of picking up the pieces lies a spirit. Neighbors who never knew each other now do and are struggling together. Jeff Welch, NewsCenter 13, Eau Claire.
While residents picked up the pieces of their battered homes, Northern States Power Company went to work fixing battered power lines. As soon as they could, NSP crews began inching through the city, repairing the miles of downed lines and clearing trees out of lines still intact. At first, the utility expected 90% of the city to be lit by Friday night, but trees tangled in the wires slowed crews and set back that prediction to sometime this week. The repairs that crews were able to make were temporary.
Trying to get as many customers back into service as possible in a lump sum. Some distribution wires going to the houses and so forth are just taped up and cut down if they're torn off, and then will be installed at a later date.
NSP brought in help from several utilities in the state, as well as NSP crews from Minnesota. Linesmen, mechanics, company supervisors, and even janitors were pressed into service. Even with the added manpower, most linesmen found little time to rest. Most worked round the clock. While work moved slowly in the city, NSP's crews faced another monumental repair job in the countryside. The strong winds took down 10 miles of this 345 kilovolt power line stretching from Elk Mound to Menominee. Crews should be ready to set new poles in place this week, but it will take 2 months before the line is back to normal. The latest estimates show more than 85,000 NSP customers lost power in the storm. As of today, about 10% of Eau Claire is still without power. NSP's Lynn Moline says the outages are scattered in pockets around the city. But Chippewa Falls, the Menominee area, and rural areas east of Eau Claire are reported in good shape. The cost of repairs will be staggering. NSP's Moline says in the millions of dollars. That will include overtime and expenses for 300 utility crewmen, power poles, equipment, gasoline, and replacement power for the area. As the power blackout stretched from hours into days, the temperature climbed into the 80s, thus preserving foods became next to impossible. The result was a run on fast foods at the few restaurants that were open.
Well, yes.
By lunch hour on Thursday, there were long lines at drive-up windows and a wait of 25 minutes or more to receive an order. Those who tried to salvage the food stored in their freezers were given a helping hand from the Red Cross. 24 tons of dry ice were distributed to hundreds of residents, and the Red Cross also served hot meals. Spoiling food and the threat of food poisoning became a concern to area health officials who put out a better safe than sorry warning.
If you have 3-day-old food in a refrigerator that hasn't had electricity, then get rid of it. If you have food in a freezer that is now soft, get rid of it. It is better to get rid of that than it is to come down with a possible case of food poisoning.
The warnings apparently worked. Neither Luther nor Sacred Heart Hospital had even one reported case of food poisoning. In just a minute, a look at how the damage added up in dollars and cents. We'll be right back.
From Fairings, it's their semi-annual store-wide sale featuring savings up to 20% on all in-store items and special orders. Names such as Hardin, Hickory, Henredon, and Baker, carpet by Karastan, Lee, and Milliken. And downstairs in the Treasure Cove, you'll find one-of-a-kind floor samples up to 50% off. Add beauty and elegance of fine furnishings to your home now during the semi-annual store-wide sale on Now at Fairings.
When has any siding had the impact of the new double insulated panel from Spickler's? A company survey has shown over 85% of all sales come from word-of-mouth satisfaction. The overall response has been that nothing else even compares, and the price is right. Outstanding sales the past 2 months has resulted in a commitment from the company to extend the price break on a limited allotment of the new colors, still saving you $500 or more on the average siding job. So call Spickler's at 834-8166.
Emergency government officials have now finalized property damage estimates from the storm, and the figures are overwhelming. Total damage in the four-county area is estimated at $159,522,650. Damage was heaviest in Eau Claire County, where losses total nearly $61 million. $50 million of that occurred in the city of Eau Claire. In Dunn County, officials estimate losses at better than $38 million. O'Galley Township and the city of Menominee were especially hard hit. In Pierce County, damage is estimated at nearly $30 million, mainly in Elmwood and rural areas. And in Chippewa County, damage is estimated at nearly $11 million. In addition to damage reports from the four counties, damage to public properties such as government buildings, streets, and utilities totals more than $7 million. Timber losses, $15 million. More than $2 million lost in wages to workers. Grocery stores lost $650,000 worth of food. Private food losses were much higher, totaling more than $2 million, and $850,000 lost by farmers forced to dump milk. One major category has not even been added into property damage figures. That category is economic losses suffered by businesses forced to close after the storm. The figure is expected to be quite high. Governor Dreyfus is scheduled to ask President Carter for a federal disaster declaration sometime tomorrow. The figures we just showed you will be used in that request. Property damage from Tuesday's storm, according to Area Emergency Government Director Al Sperger, is nearly 3 times greater than any other disaster in Wisconsin history. But the loss of life in this storm doesn't come close to other major storms. 1 person died in the storm last Tuesday. That compares with 35 deaths in the Colfax tornado back in 1958 and 199 deaths resulting from the New Richmond tornado of the late 1800s. With damage estimates shooting up to nearly $160 million, including $50 million in the city of Eau Claire alone, insurance companies will be swamped with claims for weeks. Homeowners are keeping insurance agents busiest. Homeowners understandably want to settle claims as fast as possible so they can clear debris and have their home repaired. But agents say policy holders will have to be patient.
Well, we anticipate that we'll probably have in the area, which includes Eau Claire, Menominee, Ellsworth area, around 800 to 1,000 homeowners.
Area insurance agents say it could take weeks or months for most claims to be processed. There are also 200 to 300 claims for cars crushed by fallen trees. And the state insurance commissioner has sent some advice this way. Make sure that firms who remove debris or cut down trees on your property are insured themselves, so you're not liable in the event of an accident. And make sure you keep accurate records of every insurance transaction. By the morning after the storm, local and state officials were sure the area would be declared a federal disaster area. Governor Dreyfus was in Detroit at the Republican National Convention. It was Friday before the governor toured the area. Rebecca Lentz reports.
Dreyfus took a brief tour of Eau Claire by car and without hesitation told reporters the city looks like Okinawa. He says he's convinced by what state emergency government officials have documented that damage in the four-county area is up to $250 million. Dreyfus says, no doubt about it, this is federal disaster magnitude.
We'll be going for a declaration, a federal declaration. It's scheduled for Tuesday. I'm trying to get them to move the date up. I'd like to go in with it by Monday if we've got all the information. Normally, with a situation like this of $250 million, you estimate that about maybe as high as $100 million is insured. That leaves $150 million unprotected, and usually you go for about half. So I'd be looking for something of the magnitude of $75 to $100 million in federal funds, and that's what's needed here.
Dreyfus says he doesn't even want to think about the possibility of President Carter turning him down for the declaration, but if it happens, he says, the state will do everything it can to provide assistance to the four-county area. Although the National Guard unit in Eau Claire has been relieved, Dreyfus says 150 guardsmen will remain on Dunn County farms to help milk cows. Rebecca Lentz, News Center 13, Eau Claire.
Other officials also said there was sure to be federal aid. Senator William Proxmire, Congressman Al Baldus, and State Emergency Government Director Michael Early all told the News Center that federal disaster help was a sure thing. More immediate help came from the Salvation Army, the National Guard, and especially from the Red Cross. Jeff Welch has more.
The Red Cross has been serving hot meals at North High School since Thursday. More than 4,000 people have taken advantage of the service, which is free for anyone who's hungry or can't stomach any more crackers and snacks some have been attempting to survive on for lack of food. Red Cross considers its hot meal and mobile meal programs the most valuable of all its services to storm victims.
People who have been without power and are able to have a hot meal, a hot cup of coffee, that sort of thing, they really appreciate it. I just came back off of a mobile feeding van, and it was very gratifying to see the reaction of people.
Meals are being served at North High from 8:30 in the morning until 6 at night. Today, Red Cross extended its operation by opening a disaster service center. Red Cross says it now can provide victims with most any emergency need.
Temporary housing, to groceries, to medications. Perhaps somebody lost their eyeglasses in the storm. Pampers for youngsters. Any of the emergency needs that people have that need to be taken care of to enable them to get back on their feet.
To receive assistance, caseworkers interview victims to find what their emergency needs are. If it's groceries, for instance, a dispersing order is issued, which can be taken to any supermarket and used as money. Red Cross foots the bill. Red Cross usually provides victims with shelter, but Salkin says shelter need is not that great. She says most people without homes have been taken in by neighbors or relatives. Red Cross says it will be operating its disaster service every day from 9 to 6 for as long as it's needed. Jeff Welch, News Center 13, Eau Claire.
When we continue, a closer look at how the storm happened and why.
This is it, the absolute end of the Boston Spring and Summer Sale. So shop now for final markdowns on men's vested suits at just $89. Men's sport coats reduced to $47. Men's slacks priced at only $10. Dress shirts regularly $21, now just $7. And men's sports shirts also just $7. For the best possible savings on men's spring and summer clothing, shop the Boston in London Square Mall. You'll be glad you did.
National Frigidaire Week is going on right now. There's no better time to buy Frigidaire appliances. Only once a year. National Frigidaire Week. 100% frost-proof Frigidaire refrigerators on sale. Frigidaire electric ranges with self-cleaning ovens on sale. Super cleaning Frigidaire washers on sale. With matching dryers on sale.
Federation Co-op, Black River Falls, Dietz and Sierra Mondovi, Consumers Co-op, Eau Claire.
The kind of weather we had last Tuesday is what causes nightmares for meteorologists. Our meteorologist Tom Magnuson is here now to try and explain exactly what happened last Tuesday night.
Yeah, it was kind of a nightmare. And the thing to realize about weather, any weather system, is the organization factor of it. In a severe thunderstorm, airflow within the storm is well organized, and it's in a distinct updraft pattern, and that's to the air ahead of the thunderstorm. Air in the central part of the storm is cooled by evaporation of the intense rainfall, like when your body is robbed of heat when stepping out of water into a summer breeze. This cool air is much heavier than the surrounding air and literally falls through the storm. This rapidly sinking air is called a downburst. The air hits the ground and spreads out across the landscape, much like water falling from your kitchen faucet into the sink below. This downburst of air causes gusty winds near the ground. The cool downburst air spreading out ahead of the storm created a bowl radar echo or spearhead radar echo, and you can see the arrows there indicating the direction of the wind flow. Here's what it looked like on NewsCenter radar with that storm. You can see it just southwest of the Twin Cities shortly after 7 o'clock. And as we roll this lapse along, you'll see the storm moving rapidly to the east at 60 miles an hour into western Wisconsin. And in this frame, you can see that bow echo. So we come in on the radar scope and see it right there, just to the west of Menominee across Dunn County, moving eastward at 60 miles an hour with the very strong gusty winds behind that bow echo. And here's what it did in the Chippewa Falls-Eau Claire area. That storm moved right between the two cities with the most intense winds at the airport, plus 110 miles an hour with a tornado reported in that area. In Eau Claire, the winds were strong out of the west-northwest at 100 miles an hour here at the NewsCenter with strong south to southwest winds in the Chippewa Falls area.
I was back in the weather room when the gauge hit topping 100 miles an hour, and that was a very eerie feeling.
It was. The roof shuddered. It was just amazing.
How often does something like this happen, Tom?
Well, it's happened several times this year across the country. In fact, Kalamazoo, Michigan, they had a very severe tornado and windstorm. That was earlier this year. Also in Grand Island, Nebraska, they had that series of tornadoes. Had some very strong winds in Waterloo, Iowa, the first part of July, 104-mile-an-hour winds, and also strong winds in North Dakota over 100 miles an hour. So it happens quite a bit, but not in one area throughout a year.
Concentrated like that.
That's right. The amazing thing about this was the damage path was so long through eastern Minnesota right into central Wisconsin. It was a very wide path, too, about 20 miles wide.
Those winds were more destructive than what you even get in a hurricane, right?
You're right.
It was very, very strange. I hope we don't get anything like that for quite some time to come.
I don't think we will.
Thanks very much, Tom. The effects of the storm are so widespread that it's almost impossible to show you everything in a 1/2-hour program. NewsCenter 13, of course, will continue to report on the storm and its aftermath in the months and the weeks ahead. That's our special report. Thank you. Good night.